your men can have love for the truckie. Beautiful minds, but we love getting ugly. Risk takers with a clover, man, we love getting lucky. You run, we chase fire, I love when it ducks me. Tones go off, house watch, read the address out. 1075, get up off the magic couch. 500 gallons prepared for the baddest drought. Who else you want on the way when disaster's out? Can't even get a little bit rattled when you enter with exit apparel. Mayday, member down, they'll drag you. You won't get this from every Tom, Dick, and Harold, but here's a view from the top floor with Mickey Farrell.
A catchphrase or I guess, slogan that we've kind of adopted in the subculture of today's fire service. I think that it's a good concept, but we have to be careful when we're talking about them as a broad statement. Them comes with responsibility, unity, selflessness, commitment to something greater than oneself. That's what them stands for. But for me, that's what the fire service always was. So I kind of struggle with this catchphrase or understanding of just them. Is it a marketing type idea? Is it something to keep people in a series of standards? But the bottom line is, I think that when we use the word them, as in the civilians, as in something greater than ourselves as individuals on the fire ground, I think we have to understand that everything comes back down to the X's and O's of firefighting, tactically based sound decision making. That ultimately equals them in the end. And for where I've come from and the fires that I've gone to and the culture I've been a part of, the traditions I'm a part of, them is just an understanding of that's the job. So today's episode, I sat with Germany on his back porch, and we kind of dove into the catchphrase, or I say catchphrase, but this banner that we're seeing advertised throughout the fire service of them. The mission is about them, and it always was, it always has been, and always will be. But there's a sense of responsibility when we talk about them that we have to understand when we use this to navigate or bring in the concept of today's fire service. So join me and Jeremy on his back porch. Quick episode, short episode, kind of hit some bullet points. We talk about some training, some staffing, and we ultimately talk about how we have to not broad stroke the fire service with catchphrases and slogans. And when we do that, we have to understand it's a responsibility of what we're preaching.
The safety of the firefighter, it's always number one in the fact that we look out for each other. We're never going to a fire looking to get killed or looking to leave you hanging somewhere or not do the right thing as a team, as a company, as a department. We're always, safety is first in the sense, but it's not going to jeopardize what we do at the fire ground. Saving civilians is what we do. And we put ourselves in great danger every time we go out the door. But we do have to have somewhat of a safety understanding with one another, but it never comes ahead of the civilians. If that makes any bit of sense. I don't know. But that safety comes from being all in on this job, training, going to fires, getting better at them, humility, making your mistakes and getting better and progressively moving the job forward. That's safety to me. Not necessarily not going in a fire building. You know what I mean?
I think this whole safety culture thing, I think it's gone. I think it's gone just in a crazy way, where people are getting confused and tripped up with what that is.
Yeah.
I think any well put together department, disciplined department that has a very high level of firemanship, Ray McCormack. A culture of extinguishment, not a culture of safety.
Yeah.
I think if we teach our people and train our people to do the job to the very best of their abilities and give them the equipment and tools to do that, that is the safest we could ever be. What I'm concerned about is though, and I don't know if it is that safety culture or if we just have departments that have lost track of what truly the American Fire Service truly stands for. That is protecting life and property of complete strangers.
Yeah.
Why do we have to package it up and then almost like we sell it almost like it's for them? We're here for them. No shit. It's always been that way. Do we have to, is it just a marketing and gimmick, a ploy to sell t-shirts and hats? Maybe. Maybe that's what it is. It's a creative marketing solution. If it is, well
Great.
done.
Yeah.
Well done.
No, yeah.
But we can't lose track of what the absolute mission is. And what I worry about is when we have to start really breaking down and defining what it is, have we lost track of what it's been? I don't know.
Again, I think this might be a regional thing where
I don't know, man. It could be. I worry that we don't have enough people talking about, and maybe that's what this is. It's a talking point. Maybe that's what it is. I'm worried that we're not talking enough about the importance of this job and what this job requires from you, from me, from our firefighters, right? Like, I almost think that maybe we aren't doing a good enough job really breaking it down and explaining to people, like, this is what the expectation is.
there's
Like,
a standard
this
that
is
has to be set.
100%.
And when we set a standard, we have to follow it. We have to be all in to understand the standard. Now, I think that when we have a standard, a lot of time those standards aren't written down. And the safety culture has rules and regulations, SOPs, SOGs, all these things that create safety in their eyes. I think that that slogan, them, kind of debunks, okay, this is safety, but that standard has to be followed. What that standard is very regional almost, I think, where maybe in certain places they're not going into burning buildings as much as other places. Again, a regional thing. I don't know. I'm kind of lost for words with the whole thing because I don't understand it. I wish I had more to express on it, but like for me, it's always been the job is
Yes.
about civilians. Like
Yeah.
that's why we do this is to help people.
But that's the interesting thing about this, right? Is like you don't need a slogan to tell you what this job is, but maybe we've gotten to this point where because it's misfiring in other places, we do need to spell it out for them. I mean, I talked about that before. We were talking about something else, and I was like, maybe we need to teach the expectations of the things that were just assumed to be understood.
Yeah.
I don't know, but if we've gotten to that point where I actually have to tell you that your responsibility is to go save that person or protect that property, if we've gotten to that point, man, there's a lot of other things that are wrong.
Yeah, and then like honestly, the whole them slogan, when you start to dive into it, there's tactics based with this where now you get into the conversation of, well, you pull up, right? In a scenario, you have one engine, house is on fire, no truck. Do you go save the civilian or do you put the fire out? And like, well, it's about them. Let the building burn and go get them. Like, we have to be very careful when we start using the word them and the tactical sense behind them. Now it's understanding truly the X's and O's of firefighting. Like, how are we going to protect them? So it's not just a hat or a t-shirt. There's the understanding of the fire ground, the fire floor, and the floors above the fire that are so incredibly important that has to be passed down through that standard. That's not necessarily written down in the safety rule book, but the safety rule book is going to fires and learning from them and doing the right thing at fires and understanding what tactics need to be deployed at what fire. That's where you have to be careful with slogans. Just like the fire service likes to use acronyms. We have to be careful with acronyms because if you don't understand what the job truly is and that mission, quote unquote, well, then the acronym means nothing. It means nothing at all. You have to understand it's most times an acronym is just the process of getting a position on a fire, but understanding what an acronym stands for is important for, logically speaking, testable points, not realistically them.
I love it because you got to know where it fits in. If
Yeah.
you don't understand, I mean I love that. It's a very good way to put it. I think what we're doing is we're trying to package things up today in a way of, almost like gimmicky or downplaying how smart we think people are today by making it simpler.
Yeah.
Drives me nuts. We should give value to our firefighters and our training academies and the people that are there teaching and training. And if they're not getting the message through to them about what firemanship is, what firefighting is, and what that means, then you got to make some changes there. But I think that the for them, I've been trying, like you, I didn't really understand it. And I'm still trying to like say, okay, for them, does that mean then us, we don't matter? Or how does that work? How does them work?
Yeah.
I just it's one of those things.
I don't get it
I
still
think
to this day.
I think it's gotten away from us. I think what we need to do, and I think what my point is with this whole conversation, whether there's any value in this talk or not, is let's just focus on what the job is at hand, and understand that there are priorities within, and to be able to understand the priorities in which they fall on the fire ground, you have to know the job.
Yeah. And we have to be careful, again, the details of what that means. So, like, as simple as the word baseball, right?
Mhm.
Well, okay, there's a lot that goes into baseball,
Right.
and you have to understand the game of baseball to be good at it. Them is the fire service. It's a lot of intricate details of tactics that truly promote and understand what them is.
How do we teach this job? You just made a very good point. Baseball. You have to understand baseball to then know how to play. Right?
Yeah.
How are we teaching firefighting?
So,
Or how should we be teaching firefighting so that people then know where to fit in and how to play?
I mean, this goes back to the whole sporting thing, and I think why most times previous athletes, high school athletes, college athletes, they pick up on the game of firefighting very, very quickly, where the others struggle a little bit. They get it in time, but it takes the understanding of teamwork for one, humility number two. Two very important things that we have to be teaching. Can we teach humility? You can teach that it's okay to have it, but then it's developed over time, a series of mistakes. That makes you a great firefighter. I say it all the time. But how we teach firefighting is we have to get into the X's and O's, the nitty gritty of like tactical based positioning on a fire. And when we talk about the staffing, we've had this conversation before with staffing, is like, you have to understand the game of basketball, right? You have to understand it, like baseball, basketball, the fire service, right? So now let's break it down. And those of you that are listening, well, this guy's talking about staffing. He's a New York City fireman. We have 3 guys in the rig. Great. But I guarantee you, everybody listening at least played a pickup game of basketball once in their life. And I highly, highly would guess that nobody was playing 5-on-5 full court basketball.
Right.
However, everyone understood the game of basketball and where to fit in the moment, the X's and O's of how to play 2-on-2 at the park. We're still playing basketball, but we're understanding the game. And those that played 2-on-2, 3-on-3 was an Olympic event this year.
Yeah, it was. I saw that. Yeah.
So right there it tells you that it's understanding the game of basketball, but then how to use the X's and O's within it to accomplish winning the game, scoring the basket. How we accomplish putting a fire out is moving those X's and O's throughout a fire building. Even though we may not have the staffing, but being able to pivot in the moment and make a decision that will fill in the gap if we were playing 5-on-5, full court press. That's how we have to teach it, is we have to teach the game, but then break it down to the X's and O's within the game. I think that's where we're failing the fire service. So they put the slogan, them, out there, almost like summarizing, well, it's about scoring basketball. It's about making hoops. It's about scoring points. Really, it's about the intricate detail. So we have to be careful when we just put the word them out there, because those may not understand the X's and O's of firefighting, and it could be dangerous.
So I love all of that. And I love that so much that I think you need to explore that a lot further in a program or something, because I think there's so much there.
I do that with Truck Intellect as a class.
Okay. Which is
somewhat developing.
Which I think is incredible, because I've never thought, you and I've talked about the importance of sports and, upbringing and so on, but to break it down on a regular game of 5-on-5 versus then you go down to the 3-on-3 to 2-on-2, and yet the goal and objective is always the same, whether it's 5-on-5 or 2-on-2. It's always the same. The objective is the same: score points, right?
Yeah.
So you still have to get the job done, whether it's 3-on-3, 5-on-5. I love that, like, just that concept behind that. I love that. But I wonder too, and I want to challenge you on this a little bit more, right? Because I know you've done some teaching, some training. You speak nationally, of course, but even your own fire department, you've taught. Um, teaching, like when we get people in that don't have a background in it, I grew up in it, right? I was reading the magazines, looking at pictures, understanding at a very early age the differences and nuances within the job and so on. And then obviously, once you get hired or you join your volunteer department, you can then start putting what you've already learned to practice, right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people that come into this job that don't have any background in it. And so, how do we teach firefighting?
I think we have to parallel everyone's background. So when I'm teaching within my job,
yeah,
I always ask the guys, what'd you do before this?
I love this.
Oh, I was a carpenter. Okay, great. So you can relate to this. And right there, you level the playing field. Like, oh, I can relate to this? Really?
Yeah. Job site, supervisor, foreman.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right, jobs. And okay, so now we have to go in and we have to demolition the room, take everything out. Then we're going to put the drywall up there, right? And then we're going to put the bases in first. Then we're going to put the wall boxes. Then the tops come. So there's a sequential order of how we do things.
I love it.
And they're like, oh, yeah, it makes sense. And then you go, listen, at the fire ground, sequential order. First thing we're doing, we're forcing that door. We're searching behind the door, right? So we just demoed the door, right? Just the obstacle. Taking the old kitchen out's the obstacle, right? Now putting the drywall up, searching behind it, right? Now we got to go find the fire. That's putting the bases in, right? Now we put the base, we find the fire. We got the fire back here. Bring in the engine, put the wall units in, yeah? So it's like, if you can relate to whatever they did prior,
yeah,
you can learn firefighting very quickly.
Yeah, I love that.
But you have to bring it down to what they already know. And this is another thing, is that we have to remember that, yes, you're in the academy and you are this so-and-so city's probationary firefighter. But 3 days ago, you might have been working at Best Buy. We can't forget that. So we have to be able to bridge that gap for them, like you like to say, and make it understandable. Because they don't know anything about engine, truck, ladder, them. They don't know them. Like, what's them?
Right, who's them?
Yeah. So if you just bridge that gap, I think it's a real basic way of making everyone on a level playing field and can able to learn the X's and O's of firefighting, or the X's and O's of carpentry or plumbing, or I had a probie, he was a cop, and I'm trying to relate to him something, and I go, well, you were a cop, so, and then I started like talking like cop stuff, like, and then when I started like making like understanding about like doing police work, it all made sense to him.
Right.
But he thinks he's a fireman now. He can't think about being a cop, but really, everything we do in life has a sequential order, and when we can just combine into the fire service, I think that's how we have success.
Yeah, and I think too, the importance of understanding perspective and where people are coming from, and our instructors, our firefighters, our senior firefighters, taking time to learn their people so that they understand how to connect with them.
Yeah.
To be able to teach this, because when you really get into it, like, firefighting is so big. So big. I could rattle off 300 things right now that are like things to consider, right? Just on the fire ground alone, let alone all the other minutia that comes with it, right? Yeah. It literally is a way of life. It is a lifestyle. And so it takes time. And you always talk about believing the process, trusting the process, and it's a long game. I agree with you wholeheartedly. And I think that we need to get people started on a good foot, and that takes being all in on our people and allowing for them to be part of the process. I think is super important. But I often wonder today, it's like, are we doing enough at the ground level to make people fall in love with the job?
Something that's so important, and we've talked about this, but I don't think we ever talked about it and captured it.
Yeah.
The word coward. So I think being all in on a young firefighter, we're so quick to like dismiss someone who maybe didn't do the right thing or had a mistake at a fire, and you're like, oh, that kid doesn't get it. He might be a coward, right? We throw that word around far, far too often. That's a really bad word in the fire service. That's like the C word when you talk to your wife.
Yeah, right.
You don't ever say that.
Nope.
You're done, right? Nope. So we throw it around far too often. And I think it comes from, like you said, investing or being all in on that young firefighter is telling him, listen, I'm going to bring you to a place you've never been. But if you never bring that guy, he'll never go.
That's right. You
have to be willing to bring him there. That's so important for a young firefighter. even in Proby school, we'd have an evolution there where we bring them in and we push the limits. Now, limits within standards of safety, obviously, but to them, again, they were at Applebee's 3 days ago,
Right.
and now they're on the fire floor, and they're taking a feed. Now, again, it's totally safe, but to them, it's not. If you told someone to go in that building and do that, I wouldn't go unless someone has taken me and said, brother, you're going to be all right. Come on, I'll show you. So now you get to your first fire. Get in his ear. Brother, down the hall on the left, we got one more room. Let's do it. He's going to go. Very, very few people won't make that room. If you just tell them, brother, I've been there before. I'm going to bring you. I'll show you. It's okay. Come on. That's how we have to invest in our young firefighters.
I love that. The problem is I think we're starting to miss more and more the guys that have been there to be able to whisper into the new guy's ear and say, trust me, I've been there. We can do this. Let's go. We have a lot of people today that haven't been there yet.
Yeah. Well, now the struggle I'm starting to see is that we need experienced, higher-ranking chiefs telling other chiefs, brother, I've had this before. They're okay. They're going to do it.
Yeah, well, it goes right up the line.
Yeah,
I mean,
it certainly does.
Not just the senior firemen, because those guys that were senior firemen that maybe didn't have the experience, then got into company officer positions, and then are getting into chief positions.
You got to let you got to let your men work.
Yeah.
Again, circling back to them, that's that safety culture where we have to be careful from the command staff side, where they're looking at this building on fire. The guys are doing the right thing. Most times, the guys are doing the right. Most times, I would say 99% of the time, the guys want to go in and put the fire out.
Yes.
But when you hold them back and say it's not safe, well, then I can understand it is about them, right? And that makes sense to me. Well, listen, Chief, they're inside. Who's inside?
Yeah.
Them.
Yeah.
You know,
one of my favorite things was I was talking to Chief Rhodes, fire engineering, in the podcast, and we were talking about safety culture, and he said, yeah, he's like, you ever see those videos where firefighters are on scene and they're doing their 360 and talking about all these things, meanwhile civilians are pulling people out of the burning building while the firefighters haven't even acted yet because we're checking off the boxes and making sure we're doing our 360 and talking on our radio and doing all these things. Meanwhile, the cops are in there making grabs in polyester uniforms, or civilians, or the pizza guy driving by ran past firemen to go in and grab people. What the fuck are we doing?
so right. There's so much truth to that. No, so much truth to that.
It's just wild, right? I think that we're in a unique time right now, where I think, as much as we can push back on all these topics, we're still, I think, in a place where there's excitement. People want to learn more about the job. And what I'm finding is the more we're willing to give people, the more they're willing to go all in.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love where we are today.
I had a recent post about the work-life balance, and I'm not going to go into that. I just what I want to say is I was very disheartened to see the climate of the job on a national level of guys not wanting to do a little bit more to make them that much better. It's as simple as that. You should want to be there to go to as many fires as you can that first year, especially.
Yeah.
Never putting your family aside from that. But you have to be willing to be all in, and you want to go to as many fires so you can make as many mistakes and get better from them as quickly as possible. Because the quicker you make mistakes, the quicker you'll become a better firefighter, and ultimately your company, your department, your city will become a great place to work because everyone's pushing themselves. You got to push yourself. Being there will allow that other guy to say, brother, one more room. You know why? Because you picked up overtime that day.
I love that. Yeah.
You stepped up and did the right thing. Company needed a guy. The firehouse needed a guy. City needed a guy. You're there. But guess what? Somebody just took you to a place you've never been, a place you never thought you could go. And you were there. And you go home and you see your kids and tell your wife, listen to what I did today. So that's, to me, that's the job.
Yeah.
Never putting a job ahead of your family. But understand there are priorities that are so important, and that's the standards that we have to stay to. The standards are very important, and we're losing standards as we're losing experience. Guys are retiring, and generations are kind of backfilling the fire service. And I think maybe that's why this whole thing of them has become a slogan, because we've lost it. We've lost that standard.
I love it. I can do this every day with you, man. It's fun.
It is fun. Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you for having
Yeah,
me over.
Of course. Always.